Was John Dickinson a Christian? Well, why don't we ask him? He wrote this letter. He had these big old letters that he wrote, and this was one of them. And it says, "My dear countrymen, perhaps the objection to the late act imposing duties upon paper etc. might have been safely rested on the argument drawn from the universal conduct of parliaments and ministers from the first existence of these colonies to the administration of Mr. Greenville. What but the indisputable, the acknowledged exclusive right of the colonies to tax themselves could be the reason that in this long period of more than 150 years, no statute was ever passed for the sole purpose of raising a revenue on the colonies? And how clear, how cognate must that reason be, to which every parliament and every minister for so long a time submitted without a single attempt to innovate? England, in part of that course of years, and Great Britain in other parts, was engaged in several fierce and expensive wars, troubled with some tumultuous and bold parliaments, governed by many daring and wicked ministers, yet none of them ever ventured to touch the palladium of American liberty. Ambition, avarice, faction, tyranny, all revered it. Whenever it was necessary to raise money on the colonies, the requisitions of the crown were made and dutifully compiled with. The Parliament from time to time regulated their trade and that of the rest of the empire to persevere their dependence and the connection of the whole in good order. The people of Great Britain, in support of their privileges, boast much of their antiquity. It is true they are ancient, yet it may well be questioned if there is a single privilege of a British subject supported by longer, more solemn, or more uninterrupted testimony than the exclusive right of taxation in these colonies. The people of Great Britain consider that kingdom as the sovereign of these colonies, and would now annex to that sovereignty a prerogative never heard of before. How would they bear this? Was the case their own? What would they think of a new prerogative claimed by the crown? We may guess what their conduct would be from the transports of passion into which they fell about the late embargo, though laid to relieve the most emergent necessities of state, admitting of no delay, and for which there were numerous precedents. Let our liberties be treated with the same tenderness as it is all we desire. Explicit as the conduct of parliaments for so many ages is, to prove that no money can be levied on these colonies by Parliament for the purpose of raising a revenue, yet it is not the only evidence in our favor. Every one of the most material arguments against legality of the Stamp Act operates with equal force against the act now objected to, but as they are well known, it seems unnecessary to repeat them here. This general one only shall be considered at present, that though these colonies are dependent on Great Britain, and though she has a legal power to make laws for preserving that dependence, yet it is not necessary for this purpose, nor essential to the relation between a mother country and her colonies, as was eagerly contended by the advocates for the Stamp Act, that she should raise money on them without their consent. Colonies were formerly planted by warlike nations to keep their enemies in awe, to relieve their country overburdened with inhabitants, or to discharge a number of discontented and troublesome citizens. But in more modern ages, the spirit of violence being, in some measure, if the expression may be allowed, sheathed in commerce, colonies have been settled by the nations of Europe for the purpose of trade. These purposes were to be attained by the colonies raising for their mother country these things which she did not produce herself, and by supplying themselves from her with these things they wanted. These were the national objects in the commencement of our colonies, and have been uniformly so in their promotion. To answer these grand purposes, perfect liberty was known to be necessary, all history proving that trade and freedom are nearly related to each other. By a due regard to this wise and just plan, the infant colonies exposed in the unknown climates and unexplored wilderness of this new world lived, grew, and flourished. The parent country with undeviating prudence and virtue, attentive to the first principles of colonization, drew to herself the benefits she might reasonably expect, and preserved to her children the blessings on which those benefits were founded. She made laws, obliging her colonies to carry to her all those products which she wanted for her own use, and all those raw materials which she chose for herself to work up. Besides this restriction, she forbade them to procure manufactures from any other part of the globe, or even the products of European countries, which alone could rival her, without being first brought to her. In short, by a variety of laws, she regulated their trade in such a manner as she thought most conducive to their mutual advantage and to her own welfare. A power which was reserved to the Crown of repealing any laws that should be enacted. The executive authority of government was also lodged in the Crown and its representatives, and an appeal was secured to the Crown from all judgments in the administration of justice. Now, I will continue this in part 2. Stay tuned.